Why, hello to everybody. It's Eric from epautos.com, your libertarian car guy. Thought I'd do a quick little walk around / rant about the 2020 Toyota Corolla, which is all new but is still fundamentally the same, which probably accounts for the fact that it's the best-selling car ever. 44 million something of these things have been built since 1965. To give you some sense of that, Volkswagen only made something like 22.3 million Beetles, the old model, the air-cooled rear-engine model, over a much larger production run. Beetle production began in the late 1930s and continued all the way through about the 2000 model year in Mexico. So a significantly longer production run and only about half the number of Beetles. And most people listening to this who are over 30 will remember when Beetles were everywhere. They've largely disappeared now, except that you'll see them occasionally, mostly at antique shows, whereas Corollas abound. They're everywhere. And the reason that they sold so many is it's pretty much the perfect car. It's not the sexiest car, not the fastest car, but it's just about the perfect transportation appliance. The thing is incredibly easy to live with, gets great gas mileage, has lots of room, simple upkeep, blue chip, they last forever. My ex-wife had one, and it was the best car we ever had. I routinely see Corollas from the 90s still in regular use as daily drivers, and of course the 90s is a quarter century ago, a long time ago. Some of the specific things that I like about the new Corolla that are still very similar to older Corollas, believe it or not, this thing still comes standard with an engine that has port fuel, not direct injection. People who have listened to me rant before know that I'm not a huge fan of direct injection, which is now very common in new cars. Direct injection does have some advantages. It does allow for better fuel economy, though not that much, and more power, though not all that much, at the cost of considerable complexity. The DI system operates at something like 2,000 pounds per square inch, whereas a PFI system operates at about 35, maybe 40 pounds per square inch, something like that. And the DI system has multiple fuel pumps, just a much more complex and expensive system. And if you're looking at a car as just something to get you from A to B as inexpensively and practically as possible, with as little fuss and muss as possible for as long as possible, you probably don't want DI. Something else you probably don't want is a turbocharger. People who have been perusing the offerings at new car dealerships lately will notice that turbos are in practically everything, even big SUVs like that Ford Expedition that I'll be reviewing after the Corolla. Whereas they used to be found almost exclusively in high-performance sports cars as power adders. But now turbos are being used as displacement replacers. Engines have gotten much smaller than used to be the case because of all this business of the federal government constantly decreeing ever more fuel economy out of cars, despite the buyers not particularly wanting it because they want power. Well, in order to keep the government and the buyer happy, what they've done is to bolt turbos to these little engines, so in theory they get better gas mileage, but in fact they really don't, because you have to be on boost all the time to maintain the power levels. Well, Toyota, bless them, has not yet put a turbocharged engine in the Corolla, either with its standard 1.8 liter engine or its optional 2.0 liter engine, so you don't have that worry with either of those engines, which is a really nice, appealing thing, particularly if you're buying a car with the idea that I'm going to keep this thing for probably the next 15 years or even longer. So I really like that. Something else I really like about the Corolla is the fact that you can still get this thing with a manual transmission, something that's getting to be very difficult to find even in quote-unquote economy cars. And again, it has to do with pressure from the federal government to squeeze out as many miles per gallon as possible out of cars, despite people not really being interested in that. Despite what the government says. If they were, everybody would be driving around in tiny little Prius hybrids, right? But they're not. Anyway, point is that an automatic transmission can be set up and programmed to deliver the best miles per gallon on the government fuel economy certification tests, whereas a manual transmission is more variable. Your mileage depends on how well you can handle a clutch and how well you shift. On paper, the manual doesn't get as great, doesn't get the same gas mileage as the automatic equipped version, but it's a heck of a lot more fun, and if you know what you're doing, you probably can get about the same mileage and maybe even better. Something else I like about the Corolla, it's a nice roomy car, even though it's nominally a compact. It's got enough room inside to be viable as a family car. The current model is actually about a foot longer than a circa 90s era Corolla. So by the 90s standards, a Corolla would actually qualify as practically a mid-sized car. And even though today's car is bigger, if you look at the interior specifications, you'll find that front seat legroom, back seat legroom, and trunk space is probably about 85% that of most current mid-sized cars. So it's right there on the edge of being mid-sized, and it can serve as a family car for just that reason. It's no longer just a commuter car, and you need to have another car if you got a family to cart your kids around and so on. Anyway, I will have more up at epautos.com, the web's best libertarian gearhead site, shortly. There's also a rant up there about mandatory car insurance that's been getting a lot of interest in posts and comments in reply. So if you're listening to this and you haven't checked that out, I encourage you to go over to epautos.com, check it out, see if you think I'm a crazy kook or not, and post your comments. And thanks for viewing, thanks for reading, and we'll catch up with you again soon.